Hi, welcome to Lesson 2 of the Fundamentals of Ritual Magic. Before we get started on the lecture, take a moment to go ahead and open the PDF file labeled Kabbalah. You'll want to have a visual reference to this diagram or the diagrams on this handout for this lecture. So go ahead and pause the video, and if you need to, also get a notebook and a pen, because what I'd like for you to do is jot down some answers to a couple of questions I want you to think about. The topic for this lesson is going to focus on the meaning of the ceremonial circle and why we use it in magic. But before we get into that, I'd like to set the stage and give you an opportunity to examine some of your own preconceived ideas about magic and how you define it. So let's start by examining a couple of important definitions. Go ahead and pause the video and think on these questions and write your answers down, and then come on back and hit the play button once again when you're ready. So I'd like you to think about your definition of 3 different words initially. How do you define the word occult? How do you define the word metaphysics? And what is your definition of magic? Great. So hopefully you took a couple of minutes to think about what these things mean to you personally. So what I'd like to do now is give you some classic and literal definitions of these words and the idea of magic. So let's start with the definition of the occult. Most who hear this word no doubt are suddenly bombarded with some really graphic images about horror movie scenes and blood-dripping pentagrams, right? So if you look the word occult up in the dictionary, you're probably going to be really surprised by what you find, actually. The definition of occult is to hide, to cover, or to conceal. The word occult implies that something is unknown, and more surprisingly, this word has actually been used in medical contexts. Sometimes doctors will be faced with an illness or a problem that they cannot treat or cure precisely because they don't know what it is, and they don't know what's wrong. And so what they will do is they will sometimes say that the disease or this medical problem has occult origins, meaning they have no idea what the problem is. So it's not that it can't ever be known, it's just that with the information that we have at present, we don't know anything about it yet. So with time and research, that could change. The next word that we looked at was metaphysical. Meta means beyond, and physical is obviously pretty self-explanatory. So a little literal translation of this word would be beyond the physical, which would imply that we are dealing with ideas or phenomenon that are by nature not within the realm of physical manifestation or the physical plane. This word also implies that other planes of reality do in fact exist. And lastly, let's talk about the definitions of magic. In Hermetic occultism, there are 3 definitions that have been suggested by 3 different very famous occult personalities who were members of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. The first definition comes to us from Aleister Crowley, who said that magic is the art of causing change to occur in accordance with the will. The second definition comes to us from MacGregor Mathers, who said that magic is the art of causing change to occur in nature. And the third definition comes to us from Dion Fortune, who said that magic is the art of causing change to occur in consciousness. So as you can see, these 3 definitions vary, but they all agree on one thing. Magic is the art of causing change. So if you think about it, many people arrive at any religion or spiritual practice usually as a result of some sort of internal crisis experience, and this motivates them to seek a deeper spiritual meaning for their struggles. The path of occultism is really no different. Many people arrive at this path because they want to make changes in their life, and they think that there really has to be more to their life than what they have experienced so far. So, in a sense, what I've just done for you is deconstruct some of the more inaccurate and graphic ideas of what occultism might be associated with in your mind, and what magic really is in a very practical and useful sense. So now as we revisit the 3 definitions I've given above, how do we decide which of them is the most accurate, since they all imply slightly different things? Well, all of them, in my opinion, are completely accurate. The difference happens to be defined by what plane of existence each of these people happen to be referring to. And this is where I want to draw your attention to the Kabbalistic diagram that I've asked you to open. This is a key element in the knowledge base of most high magic traditions. I'm going to keep it really simple here to begin with, and I just want to show you a couple of little things about the Kabbalistic diagram that are relevant to these definitions. So as we go through the course, know that throughout the year I will be referring back to this diagram off and on and giving you additional little snippets of information about it so that you can start to slowly build an understanding of some of the most basic concepts of the Tree of Life diagram. As we look at the diagram, what you'll see is a very complex hieroglyph that contains 10 circles, which are called spheres, or more commonly Sephiroth. These circles are connected by 32 or 22 lines, which are called paths. Additionally, you'll notice that I've divided the diagram up by drawing horizontal lines which divide this diagram into 4 different segments. It is these 4 segments that I want to be concerned with for the purpose here. The Tree of Life is basically a hieroglyph that represents the process of the creation of the known universe from the etheric and visible planes down to physical manifestation. The 4 divisions of the tree are called worlds, and each of these worlds represents a different plane of existence. The world at the top, which is inclusive of sphere number 1 only, is called the world of Atzilith, or the spiritual plane. The next level down, which consists of spheres 2 and 3, is called the world of Bria, or the archetypal plane. The next level down from that, which consists of spheres 4 through 9, is called the world of Yetzirah, which represents the higher and lower astral plane. And the final division at the very bottom consists only of sphere number 10, which is the world of Asaya, or the physical plane. So, when we look at the definitions of magic given above, we can apply these definitions to the appropriate plane of existence on the Tree of Life. Now, Crowley's definition would very likely apply to the world of Atzilith at the very top of the tree. Mather's definition would probably apply to the world of Asaya, in my opinion, at the very bottom, and Dion Fortune's would apply to both of the world of Bria and the world of Yetzirah in the middle of the tree. So to clarify one more time, for the sake of simplicity, the worlds correspond as follows. Atzilith is equivalent to the spiritual plane, and you can define that however you can figure out best to relate to it. Some people would call it the higher self, or the superconscious realm, or that state of mind where God consciousness exists in pure form, which generally speaking is often considered to be far too powerful for a finite conscious mind to comprehend. Bria is the equivalent of the archetypal world, which is more mental. So for our purpose here, we're going to consider this the mental plane, where thought begins to happen. Yetzirah, once again, is the astral plane, which is immediately connected with the emotions. So we could also refer to this as the emotional plane. It is also considered the plane that we go to when we dream or when we have spirit visions. And Asaya is the physical plane where we exist on a daily basis and where sensate experiences happen to dominate. The practice of magic assumes a belief in these different planes of existence beyond the physical world. This is why we have these elaborate symbols to represent the existence of these other dimensional planes, and it also explains why we have elaborate techniques for experiencing reality on those other planes, and those techniques make up the practice of what we call ceremonial magic. The Tree of Life functions much like a map. It gives you an orientation as to what plane of existence you are operating your ritual from, and it also helps to pinpoint your specific intentions so that you can focus effectively on what kind of change that you wish to make. Remember, we said that magic is the art of causing change. This is why all of the definitions above are correct. You might wish to create change in your spiritual orientation. You might wish to create change in your mental perceptions. You might wish to create change in your emotional state of mind, or you might wish to create change in your physical surroundings. As you can see by the definitions above, each magician who has offered these 3 different definitions of magic had a preference of where his or her focus was placed. Crowley was very identified with the idea of spiritual will. Love is the law, love under will was one of his personal and unique taglines. Establishing one's true will was Crowley's ultimate magical intention. Dion Fortune, on the other hand, focused much of her magical and spiritual intentions more in line with Jungian and archetypal psychology, and with the healing and integration of mental imbalances. So for her, magic became a means of making change in consciousness. Mathers was possibly more focused on learning how to manipulate the outcomes of his intentions with regard to the physical and natural world. And so he focuses his definition on more of a physical plane kind of a focus. So this concludes the information I want to introduce to you about the Kabbalah for the time being. What I want to do is shift your attention now to the meaning and symbolism of the ceremonial circle. And I'd like to do that in exactly the same way that I have just done with the definitions of magic, by explaining the meaning and function of the symbol in the context of each of the four worlds or four planes of existence on the tree of life. I want to talk a little bit about a big frustration that I began to observe both as a student and a teacher of magic, and I was in a position to observe some of these frustrations in the learning process of other students. What I have observed is that there has not very often been a very adequate explanation given in Wicca for why we need to use the ceremonial circle casting ritual. Usually all we are told is that we need the circle to protect us from evil spirits. Well, okay, but what does that actually really mean? We're often given some idea of the reason that we need to use the circle in one of the standard Gardnerian circle casting ritual scripts. An example of this is as follows. I conjure ye, O circle of art, that thou mayest be a temple between the worlds, wherefore do I bless and consecrate thee, so mote it be. Okay, so we know it's a temple between the worlds, but again, what does that actually mean, and how is this relevant in a way that makes practical sense to us as practitioners? What am I supposed to be afraid of? First of all, that the warnings in so many of the occult books and grimoires indicate that you have to be within the circle to protect yourself and keep yourself safe. So I decided that the standard Wiccan cookbook answer wasn't really good enough. After a lot of thought on this issue, I decided to try and provide a lot more context in answer to this very critical and very basic fundamental idea about what the circle means and why we need it so much in ritual magic. So the next 4 videos, I will offer my unique interpretation of how the circle functions on each of the 4 planes of existence outlined on the Tree of Life diagram. You will then begin to notice how the function of the circle changes on each plane of existence. So I'll see you in the next video, and we'll start with the physical plane first.